and welcome to Unknowable, the podcast where we talk about all things mysterious, unusual, or unknowable. I'm Justine.
And I'm Gray. Some weeks we break down one larger mystery between the two of us. Other weeks we pick two smaller mysteries on a theme and teach each other about them based on our own independent research. If you want to support the show, find us on social media at unknowablepodcast. Become a patron on Patreon, and find us on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe, rate, and review.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So what you just heard in the open.
A purported Bigfoot howl, shriek.
It's terrifying.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Fucking terrifying.
Awful.
I can't imagine being in the woods and hearing that.
No.
Regardless of what it is. But especially if it's unknown. You know?
Potential Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I'm all set with that.
It's freaky.
Yeah, I've heard a few Bigfoot noises and howls, and they're all terrible.
Yeah.
Just terrible.
And they're always vaguely human, which I think is the weirdest part about it. It's a mixture between an animal growl, scream, and a human.
Yeah. It's kind of what freaks me out about Bigfoot in general.
Yeah. Is
that Bigfoot is just kind of this big, hairy, man beast.
Yeah. Wild man.
Wild man. Yeah.
A lot of them, they refer to him specifically as a wild man.
A wild man. Yeah.
Weird.
I don't like it.
Right.
I mean, I do, but
it's interesting to read about, but I just don't want to ever encounter one ever in life.
It's just one more reason to never go into the woods.
Right.
We already did the episode about people disappearing in the woods.
Yep.
And now we've got a Bigfoot in the woods. Just don't go in the woods.
Nothing good about the woods.
No.
I enjoy camping.
Yeah.
But
you're going to see a Bigfoot one day.
Yes, one of these days.
Yeah.
I don't want
At your wedding in Vermont, we're going to see a Bigfoot.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I hope not.
It's going to be terrible.
Just
right on the fringes. In the forest.
Watching.
Yeah, just watching. Bigfoot loves weddings.
Look.
I feel like he'd like it.
He needs to RSVP.
Yeah, he does. So that kind of brings us to, okay, so I think pretty much everybody knows what Bigfoot is.
Yeah.
Looks like you have some general idea.
He's one of the most famous cryptids.
Yeah.
Ever.
Easily the most famous.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody that would be more known.
Maybe the Loch Ness Monster.
Right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
At least in American mythology.
Yeah.
But
it's up there.
Yeah. But I think Bigfoot might be number one.
Yeah. Everybody knows Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch. They're hairy, they walk upright, they look kind of like apes. They're in the wilderness. That's pretty much, they obviously have big feet, hence the name, which apparently are claimed to be as large as 2 feet long, which is also horrible.
That is terrifying. And they're what, 8 feet tall?
Yeah, they can be, as big as 8, even 9 feet tall, depending. I think most sightings vary between 6 feet and 8 or 9 feet. Wow. So they're huge. But yeah, about a third of all claims. So probably a lot of people, when they think of Bigfoot, think of the Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
Which is accurate because that's where about a third of all the claims of sightings are from.
Right.
With the rest of them, of course, across North America. But obviously, like Jane Goodall said, like you said, there are Bigfoot-like creatures reported all over the world. So this isn't just the United States, but United States is kind of, Bigfoot is ours in Sasquatch, or our names for that creature.
Right. So yeah, there's this is by no means a comprehensive episode on all different types of Bigfoot-like creatures, because that would be a whole podcast in and of itself.
It would take, easily we could have an entire series on Bigfoot.
Yeah. We
kind of realized when we got into this research that the Bigfoot topic is massive.
Yeah.
Just like Bigfoot. But the part of the thing is that it's not I guess a lot of cryptids are kind of similar, but it's not believed that there is one Bigfoot.
Right. It's not just a single individual. Exactly.
Because there's no way that could be true. There's been so many sightings over so many years in so many locations all over the world that this can't be just one creature.
Bigfoot would be like a taxonomy, or like a group of animals that exist in the wild that inhabit the whole planet, pretty much.
Pretty much.
In the United States, definitely densely wooded areas.
Yeah.
It's kind of their habitat. Yeah.
Bigfoot, again, we did not dive as deep into this as we could have.
Right. For
sure, because I could have spent the entire week, 8 hours a day, researching Bigfoot.
Yes.
And then we would end up with a 6-hour-long episode.
Yeah.
It would be insane. So I didn't read through, there's no way to read through every sighting because there's so many.
Right.
But generally, Bigfoot are known again, for being in the wilderness.
Yep.
This is not a type of, there's certain, even Mothman, like people have seen Mothman in the wilderness. They've seen Mothman in the city,
Yep.
flying, but like Bigfoot is not a cryptid that you see in like New York City.
I've never heard of an urban or even a suburban
No.
Bigfoot sighting.
No, this is always like people are camping, people are hunting for him.
Rural.
Yeah. This is in the woods, usually deep in the woods, and generally Bigfoot is not trying to come after you. Bigfoot is not chasing you. It's a scary sighting because you're like, holy shit.
Right.
Because again, these creatures are said to be large and intimidating.
Right.
But Bigfoot is not typically threatening.
Which I feel like could be like an adaptation. Like the reason that Bigfoot has survived for so long and has not been sort of proven to be existed.
Yeah.
Not
Totally.
His existence has not been proven.
Yes.
Is because they are sort of shy and stay away from people and have evolved to basically avoid humans.
Yeah.
Because we are detrimental to their habitat and their existence.
Exactly. Which some people kind of write off as being unrealistic, which I don't. I mean, again, I've said it before, I'm not a scientist.
No, me neither.
I'm not a primatologist. I'm not an expert on animals of any kind, but it seems to me that most animals, of course, some have adapted to be a little more friendly, and I know you have a story of a potential Bigfoot experience that was not quite as peaceful.
Yes.
But, by and large, like I would say easily 99% of people talking about their encounters have all just been that they saw the creature.
Yeah, it's always
Not
like
that
a
it was doing
quick
anything.
glimpse. Like, oh, I saw it like running, or I saw it like pass by us in the woods. Like it's never a prolonged experience.
No. And Bigfoot's not doing anything terrifying. I really should have looked up. There's a story, and I can't remember from what time frame this was, but there was a story that I read a long time ago where a guy claimed that he had been kidnapped by like a family of big feet.
Big feet?
Bigfoot.
I'm going to put my foot down right now and say that Bigfoot is like the word moose, where the singular is also the plural.
That's what I would like.
A group of Bigfoot.
Yes.
That is, I don't care.
One of the fun facts that I found were that the plural nouns Bigfoots and Big Feet are both acceptable.
I disagree.
And I wrote LOL next to it.
Yes.
Because I was like, okay. This was kind of in an article that was like a very serious, talking about Bigfoot. And it was like, you can also just say Big Feet. I was like, come on.
That is not, no.
No.
This is the hill I will die on.
Yeah, we will not be calling them Big Feet.
Bigfoot.
So he was kidnapped by a family of Bigfoot.
There we go.
And supposedly, if I remember correctly, he was like with them for days.
Yeah.
And even that was not a violent thing.
Right.
I really wish I remember what year this was and like where this guy was.
Like the early 1900s, like
right? Yes.
1920s or 30s ish.
Yeah, I feel like I might have heard it on an episode of Lore.
Yeah.
Which you should listen to.
I've listened
Lore's
to a few
amazing.
episodes here and there.
Yeah.
It might have even been Astonishing Legends.
It could have been.
The Bigfoot episode.
Yeah. But it was fascinating.
It was weird. It's a weird story, and it's one that I thought about while I was doing this research, and it's one that's always struck me as not necessarily a hoax, but just seems a little bit too good to be true. You know what I mean?
It's a detailed story.
It's very detailed, and it's very like just bizarre and hallucinogenic.
Didn't he get like tossed into like a sack and carried by this big like patriarchal Bigfoot?
Yeah, and then brought him back to like his like wife and his like children Bigfoot.
Yeah. And this guy, I think, like, kind of figured out that it was a family, just he was observing their behavior.
Yeah.
So, again, it was not, they didn't bring him there to, like, eat him or do anything terrible. I don't know why they kidnapped him.
Right.
But, yeah, he kind of was just observing how they interacted and figured out that it seemed like, a dad and a mom and a kid or kids.
Yeah.
Based on, like, partly based on their size, too. The male was obviously big, and the female was a little bit smaller, and just he was observing how they seemed to care for the smaller Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bizarre story.
Weird. I wonder if it's like the same kind of part of the human brain that comes up with like alien abduction stories. Because it's kind of similar. Like you're abducted, you're brought into this place, you're observing sort of like the ins and outs of like the behavior of this alien creature.
Yeah.
And it seems so strange.
Which was weird because it almost was like the opposite in the sense that it seemed more like he was just there observing them.
Right.
They didn't seem to care quite as much about him.
Yeah.
So it's not like, the aliens take you and experiment on you and check you out, but it was like almost seemed like the Bigfoot just kind of took him and we're just like, cool, here you are.
Right.
You're like our new, I don't know.
Pet?
Yeah, we're just going to put you on the mantle. Yeah, you just hang out over there. But yeah, so that like always came to mind. So yeah, of course, Bigfoot, again, has never been proven definitely. There have been a lot of bits of compelling evidence. I read about, so the only official first step in scientific recognition of the species was made in 2013.
Yep.
There's a non-governmental organization called ZooBank
Yes.
that is generally accepted by zoologists to assign species name. They approved the registration request for the species name Homo sapiens cognatus to be used for Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Yes.
Yeah, the request was made by a Dr. Melba S. Ketchum, lead scientist of the Sasquatch Genome Project, following the publication of an article that examined 111 samples of blood, tissue, hair, and other specimens, quote, characterized and hypothesized to have been, quote, obtained from elusive hominins in North America commonly referred to as Sasquatch.
Yes.
Which is crazy. So the follow-up step would be to secure the recognition and inclusion of a DNA sample by GenBank, which is like a DNA repository for that is also well recognized by the scientific community. And ZooBank wanted to have a quote that was saying that ZooBank and the International Commission on Zoological Nomenclature do not review evidence for the legitimacy of organisms to which names are applied.
Yes.
That is outside our mandate and is really the job of the relevant taxonomic/biological community, in this case primatologists, to do that. When H.S. cognatus was first registered, needless to say we received a lot of inquiry about it. We scrutinized the original description and registration of the name as best we could. And as far as we can determine, all the requirements for establishing the new name were fulfilled. Thus, at the moment, we have no grounds to reject the scientific name. This says nothing about the legitimacy of the taxon concept.
Right.
It's just about whether the name was established according to the rules. So,
basically,
kind of like,
there's a placeholder.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody gets a DNA sample of a Sasquatch,
Mm-hmm.
then it can be officially registered as its own taxonomic group.
Yeah, sure.
Something like that. But yeah, so it can basically be a legitimate species, recognized as independent from all other species.
Yeah, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I did like that they were kind of like, we're not saying there is a Bigfoot.
Right.
But just...
If there is, we got a name for it.
We got a name for it, and this measured up to what we need to name it, but that was about it.
What was interesting about that whole the gathering of like DNA and hair samples and everything. So they did this whole study of all these like samples of DNA, and all of it like corresponded to other known animals like bear, coyote, various real animals. But one DNA sample, the closest like DNA comparison that they had was from an extinct genus of polar bear that lived 40,000 years ago.
Weird.
Which this was collected somewhere in Central Asia, like in the Himalaya mountain region. So at the very least, there's some sort of unknown bear living in the Himalayan region that's related to an extinct polar bear.
That's kind of cool.
Which is cool. So what that made me think was, okay, if there's a bear living somewhere in Central Asia that is unknown to science, bear are just as big, if not bigger, than what Bigfoot are purported to be.
Yeah.
So if a bear can live undetected up there, why can't a Bigfoot?
Right.
Like that makes that argues the case of a Bigfoot existing so well.
Exactly. Yeah, I just don't think it's that far from a possibility that there could be. Again, there's not. I should have looked up to see how many are estimated to exist, which I don't think there could be a really accurate estimation, I guess.
Right.
Because who knows, if people saw Bigfoot in a various smaller region, how do we know that a few of them didn't see the same one?
Right.
But just the idea, it's not said that there's millions of Bigfoot around.
Right.
So it's not how could we possibly miss this? If they clearly are reclusive and they're trying to stay out of the way and they don't want to be found or interacted with, then I don't know, who's to say that they didn't evolve over all this time to make sure that happens?
Well, and they're if they're a hominid, which they're registered as a Homo sapiens cognatus, so it's a similar taxonomic group as humans, it's sort of stands to reason that they would have some sort of intelligence similar to humans.
Yeah.
And think about that guy who lived in northern Maine who just he was I forget what they called him, but he basically lived for 20 or 30 years in the woods of Maine.
What?
Just breaking into people's cabins and stealing food was completely undetected, even though he was wanted by the police.
Wow.
He lived for 20 or 30 years in the woods and was never found until recently.
Damn.
So if a human can do that, why couldn't a family of Bigfoot.
Right.
I think it's incredibly arrogant for us to say, like, no.
Yeah,
We've found
no.
every animal that
Yeah.
exists
We know
on this
every
planet.
single creature.
We've visited every inch of the woods, and we've found no evidence, and therefore it is not true.
Exactly.
Because all the time science finds things that have been unknown to science. Like every year there's new animals found, there's new like subspecies of animals found.
Yeah.
And if there's this like weird bear that's related to polar bears from 40,000 years ago,
Right.
why can't there be a primate?
Well, exactly. And clearly, I mean, Bigfoot most likely is not like its own whatever like type of animal. Like it clearly evolved from something
Right.
similar, whether that was like a bear or probably some type of primate.
Right.
So
it could be related to humans. Like we could have diverged from one of our ancestors, and like Homo sapiens became Homo sapiens us, and then Homo sapiens cognitus became Bigfoot, and like that would make a lot of sense. In fact, there is a hypothesis that what Bigfoot is just like a missing link between humans and our ancestors.
Yeah.
Like that's like the missing link that everybody always talks about.
Which
still alive.
The whole thing is ridiculous to me because I could see there are some cryptids out there that have pretty bizarre descriptions.
Yes.
Where even we haven't done an episode yet on the Jersey Devil, but the Jersey Devil is one of the ones that were like some of the descriptions are just like
it's just like a Photoshop animal.
Yeah,
like,
you just took like 8 different things.
Yeah.
So I can see. I mean, I still don't rule that out, but I can see that people could be like, "Come on, really? Like this is like 18 different things just merged into one."
Right.
But a Bigfoot is so. I don't know. Like it's just
logical.
Described. Yeah, it's logical. Like it's just like clearly, not that many people are really saying that Bigfoot is like a paranormal thing.
Well,
which
some do.
Some do.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Some definitely do, and that is a thought. But a lot of people are just saying like, isn't it possible that there's this animal out there?
Right.
That I just don't see why that could be written off so easily. That there's this primate-like animal out in the woods.
And like there's, the idea of it being a sort of, it's called like a relic species, I think. Like the idea of Gigantopithecus, which was a giant ape that lived, in the fossil record. It lived in like Central Asia and Africa, and a lot of animals that lived in Central Asia and Africa migrated to North America via the Bering Land Strait.
Yeah.
And we haven't found any Gigantopithecus fossils in North America, but anybody who studies fossils will tell you that like a tiny, tiny percentage of animals that live anywhere become fossils because it's just like such a unique set of circumstances that leads to fossilization. So it's very possible that Gigantopithecus did migrate to North America via the Bering Land Strait as well as humans and lived here, and maybe it dwindled down to a very small population that learned to like adapt to North America.
Yep.
And like that doesn't strike me as just like patently ridiculous. Like that sounds like a very logical scientific explanation for how an animal could survive here and could have come here.
Yeah.
And the fact that people write it off so instantly just strikes me as arrogant.
Yeah.
Hubris.
Exactly. Yeah. There's surprisingly few, I mean, aside from like the more hardcore researchers and people who go out and like hunt for Bigfoot.
Right.
As far as like scientists go, there are not that many people, of course, that will put their name behind the idea that there is Bigfoot. One of the big believers, Grover Krantz, passed away in 2002, American anthropologist and cryptozoologist, was one of the few that actually not only researched Bigfoot, but expressed his belief in the being's existence, which I thought was kind of cool. He authored more than 60 academic articles and 10 books on human evolution throughout his professional career, taught at Washington State University for 30 years before retiring. He has a scholarship named after him at the school. Like, he's not some weird fringe dude.
Yeah.
He began researching Bigfoot in 1963, which was shortly before he began his teaching career. And of course, again, his cryptozoology research was ignored by a lot of mainstream scientists, despite his credentials. So he ended up publishing some books kind of aimed more at casual readers, and was on like some television documentaries like In Search of and Sasquatch Legend Meets Science.
Whoa.
Yeah, which I think sucks a little bit because people don't really take a lot of those shows seriously.
Yeah.
So even seeing somebody that was like, this 30-year teacher at Washington State University who like authored all these papers. You see them on a show like that, and you're like, okay.
Right. Like, it almost hurts that it was on, like, fucking, what was it, the Sci-Fi Channel?
Yeah.
So, like, that, like, just the culture of Bigfoot researchers in some ways comes off as ridiculous. Not that I think that it's right that people write off Bigfoot researchers based on either appearance or just, like, how they talk about Bigfoot.
Right.
But it definitely kind of, like, hurts the credibility that the whole culture is just so, like, not ridiculous, but just, like, not trying to be scientific in any way, shape, or form. Not trying to, like, be peer reviewed and just, like, have this air of, like, no, like, we're scientists trying to collect data. They have this air of, like, I don't know, like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Squatching.
Aliens, man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it sucks that there's so few scientists that would take any findings or research seriously, too. So they can't even, like, get backed up. Yeah, Grover Kranz's belief was that it was an actual creature. And yeah, he theorized that sightings were due to small pockets of surviving gigantopithecines.
Interesting.
Yeah. An extinct, like you said, an extinct genus of ape that existed from perhaps 9 million years to as recently as 100,000 years ago.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Standing up to 9.8 feet tall and weighing as much as 1,320 pounds.
Damn.
Which is insane.
A car.
Yeah, in January 1985, he tried to formally name Bigfoot by presenting a paper at the meeting of the International Society of Cryptozoology, an organization founded in 82, which only lasted until 98, but Lauren Coleman, who was a member, opened the International Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, which still exists today. Yep. So this meeting was in Sussex, England, and I guess it was not permitted because he wanted to name it, so it was Gigantopithecus blacki, were these, like, largest known primates to exist. And he wanted to name Bigfoot under that name. But they didn't permit it because that already exists as a taxon.
Okay.
Which, a taxon is a group of one or more populations of an organism. Just like now.
Interesting.
Yeah. And because the creature was lacking a holotype, which is a single physical example of an organism, which, of course, nobody has yet to provide for Bigfoot, which sucks.
Interesting.
And yeah, well, I'll talk a little bit about this famous film later, but he was a big believer in maybe the most well-known Bigfoot film, the Patterson-Gimlin film, because he thought that the creature looked like it was moving very realistically and not similar to a human.
Right.
To the point where, like we were talking about with the Fresno Nightwalkers.
Yes. That
it really wouldn't be possible, or it would be extremely difficult for a human to reproduce the way that this creature in the film was walking.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is one of those things, too, that I think somebody who is more knowledgeable about human evolution and about primates would know that better. I mean, any normal person, I think, could look at that video and be like, somebody could do that.
Right.
Like, I could do that.
How hard could that be?
But when you start to study, I mean, I didn't get into the crazy, I read the crazy details, but, like, something about the angle of the knee, like the bend of the knee, and just the way that, like, the foot lifted off the ground by, like, a certain number of inches was all kind of studied to be like, that's not the way humans walk.
Right.
And that would be really difficult for a human to walk that way and also maintain the same, like, posture and gait while they did it. So it was kind of determined, at least by him, that there's, like, no way that a human could do that in a suit. So, again, we'll talk about that video later, but I just think it's cool that there's some scientists that are like, yeah, that's a thing.
I don't see why there shouldn't be. Like, it's, you know, this is, of all cryptids that I've studied, Bigfoot seems the closest to something that could really exist.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I think.
I'd say probably the most credible.
Right. Again, because as much as there are some paranormal aspects that are possible, it does just seem like it can just be some animal.
Monkeys living in the woods.
Uh-oh. I'm going to sneeze.
Uh-oh.
Maybe not. Just kidding.
Damn.
Put a pin in that. It's going to happen at some point. So, okay, so you did some research about some Maine sightings.
Yes. So, one of the interesting things about Bigfoot is digging into the local folklore and mythology around them.
Yep.
And, you know, Maine has a large population of Native Americans, or had one back in the 1800s.
Yep.
So there's some very interesting folkloric Native American creatures that may or may not have either been inspired by Bigfoot sightings, or what we now call Bigfoot.
Mm.
Or at the very least, speak to this human desire or this human like drive to identify something in the woods that is like a wild man or like a hairy beast human thing.
Yeah. Beast human thing.
Beast human thing.
With a really muscular butt.
What?
I'm sorry. He supposedly has a muscular butt.
Does he?
Yeah.
We always talk about cryptids.
Yeah.
And we talk about how muscular they are.
Yeah. It's going to come up at least one more time.
It will.
Yeah.
Because they're ripped.
They are ripped.
All right. So, in Maine, there is the Micmac and the Maliseet Native Americans.
Okay.
In their culture, they have this animal called a Chinoo. So it's essentially an ice giant. So this is interesting because they were originally humans, but they commit a crime against nature, such as cannibalism or withholding food from a starving person, which causes their heart to turn to ice.
Whoa.
So in this legend, there are these big, hairy creatures, like a Bigfoot essentially, that have a heart that is shaped like a human, but made of ice.
Yikes.
So it's interesting because we're going to get into this in the idea of skinwalkers, but skinwalkers are sort of the similar idea where they were once human, but they've committed a crime against humanity and become this mythological creature.
I was just going to say, it sounded like skinwalkers.
Yeah.
Like, didn't want to make the skinwalker connection again, but we are unintentionally just leading up to this skinwalker.
Yes, because
Skinwalker
Ranch is going to tie all of this together.
All of it together.
So these Chinoo, they're also in Penobscot in Native American folklore, where they're known as Kiwakwa. And in Passamaquoddy Native American lore, they're known as Apotomkin.
I totally believe that those are all pronounced correctly.
I
have
am
no idea.
So sorry to anybody who is a Native American who has just heard me butcher those words.
We're trying our best.
I'm trying so hard.
It's really, yeah.
So some characteristics of Chinoo / Kiwakwa / Apotomkin, they emit loud shrieks, which, like the opening of this episode.
Yep. Bigfoot
quite like that.
Do that.
Except in the lore, the loud shrieks can cause instant death.
Jesus.
Which I wonder if that's sort of an exaggeration of someone being so scared that they have a heart attack and die.
Interesting.
So
yeah.
that could be a thing. They create their own camouflage by rubbing against pine resin on trees and then rolling around in the dirt on the ground. And so it sticks like to their fur.
Yeah.
So then they can stand and they can be mistaken for trees.
Interesting.
And in some legends, they can't be cured. And they can only be killed by being chopped into pieces, or they can fall to their death.
Jesus.
In other legends, they can be cured. So like various medicines can, if you feed them this medicine, then they vomit their ice heart out. Whoa. And then they turn back into a human.
Whoa.
In other ways, you can force them to eat salt, which then unfreezes their heart. Which, if you think about it, like we salt our driveways to get rid of salt, or to get rid of ice. So it's actually strangely
interesting,
logical. So what strikes me about the Chinoo is that it's like not super paranormal. Like, I mean, it's paranormal in that they were once human and they get turned into this like creature, but its behavior isn't super paranormal. Like, you know, their loud shrieks causing instant death isn't necessarily like a paranormal thing. It could just be a heart attack.
Yeah.
They create their own camouflage by rolling in pine resin. Like, that's super logical and actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And to me, feels like an actual behavior of a real animal rather than like a legend. And then being able to cure them, that's another, like, maybe that's the supernatural part of it.
Right.
If you're going to have this animal and you're this creature in your legends, it makes sense you have to have some kind of cure just for like the story.
Yeah.
In Abenaki, Native American lore, there's an animal called a pamula. So this is a large man-like creature with red fur, which Bigfoot are often described as being red, having reddish fur.
Reddish fur.
So this is what you were referencing earlier, the encounter with a not quite so docile pamula.
Like most terrifying
Bigfoot.
Encounter I've heard of.
So a trapper in the 1800s his body was found ripped to shreds. But the thing that makes people think it wasn't just a mountain lion or something is that his body had been beaten against a tree
Oh,
and broken most of his bones before it was ripped to shreds.
that's awful.
Which it was beaten against the tree at such a height that it wouldn't be just a mountain lion like swinging its prey. It would have to be something like, man high that was swinging this trapper against the trees.
Jesus.
So I wonder, and the fact that he was a trapper is interesting because maybe, Bigfoot was out there and saw this dude like trapping small animals, and maybe Bigfoot's just like, I don't remember where I have this image in my head of though, is like Bigfoot just like crouched on like the forest floor, like petting a squirrel with like birds on his shoulders, you know what I mean? He's like the guardian of the forest.
See, another good cryptid.
Right. He's like, he just wants to help the animals that are out there.
Yep.
And the other name for this pamula that white people gave it in the 1800s was the, quote, Injun devil.
Wow.
Injun, like INJUN.
Wow.
Which is patently racist.
Terrible. So terrible. Great.
So not all
horrifying.
Not all Bigfoot are docile.
No. Some swing people against trees. Holy shit.
So, right. Isn't that wild?
It's like,
can you imagine seeing
really
that?
disturbing mental image.
Right.
Jesus.
The other interesting, so there's a ton of sightings of Bigfoot in Maine where it's just that classic, like, oh, like somebody saw a wild man, like somebody saw him like run across the road, or like saw him for a second behind a tree. And if you Google Maine Bigfoot sighting, you'll see tons of videos of just like a quick little shot of like a Bigfoot like ducking behind a tree or like running across some trees.
Interesting.
But there was another experience. This is again back in the 1800s. So the way I think about it, the earlier it makes sense to me that there would be more Bigfoot sightings earlier in American history before we colonized everything and before we industrialized the country quite so much. So in 1886, which is incidentally the same year that the Statue of Liberty was dedicated.
Nice. Fun fact.
These three men were camping 100 miles north of Moosehead Lake.
Jesus.
So fucking
way up there.
Out there, like in the middle of the woods.
Jesus.
And especially back then, like 1886, 100 miles north of Moosehead Lake, there was nothing.
Yeah, how'd you even get up there?
Right. How'd you get there and how'd you get back?
Yeah.
So there was the three men camping. Two of them left for a week to just go, I don't know, go do something. And they left the other guy at the camp.
How long it took them to get 100 miles away again.
Right, exactly.
Like, whoops.
And so the other guy's like, sweet, I guess I'll just stay here at this camp by myself.
Sure.
In literally the shit middle of nowhere. So the two men returned after a week, and they found that the third man was dead.
Oh, shit.
So they got together a party to like go hunt for the whatever killed this man, which this is a very short, it was like a paragraph. It wasn't like a lot of detail. First of all, like, where do they find all these people out 100 miles north of Moosehead Lake to go searching for what killed this man?
Yeah, where, like, they just knock on doors? Like, where did you find other houses?
Right. Were there houses with doors?
Are there houses up there now? I don't even know.
Who knows? So they searched the woods and they found a 10-foot tall wild man.
Oh, no.
And killed it.
Oh, geez.
Supposedly, like, killed a Bigfoot and, like, had it. But there's no reference as to, like, what happened to the body.
Right.
Or, like, what they did with it.
They probably fucking ate it.
Any of that. Yeah, they probably fucking ate it or
they were just
shit.
like, well, we're just out here. We can't get home for another week. We got to eat something on the way back.
Right.
Squirrels aren't going to cut it.
Eat the fucking Bigfoot.
Eat the Bigfoot. See, like, I almost wonder, I feel like a lot of the stories that imply Bigfoot being violent come from a lot further back as well. So if we're thinking there's potentially a larger population back then, and maybe some of them got pissed off more easily or were more defensive or territorial, that maybe either A, some of them got killed and they were like, oh shit, or just whatever, like they just naturally evolved over time to like not do that, because typically, obviously, animals that do that are more threatening to humans are going to get killed off more easily.
Well, yeah, like it's essentially natural selection. Like the more aggressive Bigfoot that are more willing to challenge humans get killed.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones that are more likely to like hide and just avoid humans, they're the ones that survive, and through natural selection.
Yeah.
The population of Bigfoot just become more prone to hiding.
Exactly. And then naturally dwindles, like you said, over time when things are getting more colonized and more populated, and land that was more dense with forest is now much smaller or more open if they're cutting down trees or putting in properties or whatever. That it makes sense that, not that they're necessarily like at a point of extinction now, but that they are much less
like an endangered species.
Yeah. Which again, doesn't seem crazy to me. That like there are plenty of animals that exist where it's like we know that there's only a few hundred in the world, So it's like, why couldn't that be Bigfoot?
Right.
That there's not that many.
Just reading about that. Like, for some reason I was reading about Mongolia.
Mm.
And I was reading about there's wild camels and wild donkey that live in like the plains of Mongolia.
Whoa.
Which is like, and like there's still wild horses that live there.
It's crazy.
So
to
like
me.
the fact that just like but there's only like a few hundred left.
Yeah.
So it's like it's very possible that a small breeding population could exist somewhere in a very isolated pocket.
Exactly.
Especially somewhere like dense woods like northern Maine.
Yeah.
And if Maine used to be the toothpick capital of the world, maybe still is.
Sure.
The idea being that like we log a ton of our like woods as we log and their habitat is like shrunken, they just move farther and farther north.
Yeah.
Which is just farther and farther away from humans. So there's less negative interactions between humans and Bigfoot. They
Exactly.
just kind of do their own thing and yeah. I think that makes a ton of sense.
It makes total sense. Yeah. So, okay, so my big thing that I researched was the Patterson-Gimlin film.
Classic.
The classic.
Everybody probably knows the Patterson-Gimlin film.
You might not know the name, because I didn't even know the name.
Right.
But you probably have seen this film.
Yes.
It's pretty short. It's less than a minute. It's basically the Bigfoot that was spotted is kind of walking away from the camera and looks over his shoulder.
Yeah.
At least
I think
once.
it's actually her shoulder.
Her shoulder, yes. It is supposed to be a female. I think looks over her shoulder at least once and then kind of disappears into the brush. I think you can kind of see her again before she disappears for good.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting read.
Yeah.
This was an in-depth thing.
A deep dive.
A deep dive. Okay. So this was shot in 1967, Northern California, super north. This was along Bluff Creek, which is like only 38 miles south of Oregon.
Okay.
So we're talking like way up there, like almost Oregon.
Prime Bigfoot territory, Pacific Northwest.
Exactly, Pacific Northwest. The filmmakers were Robert Patterson and Robert Bob Gimlin. So Patterson passed away in the 70s. Gimlin is still alive today.
Oh, wow.
Patterson died of cancer and maintained right to the end that the creature on the film was real. Gimlin, to this day, has always denied being involved in any part of a hoax. But I'll get into a little bit more, but he really hasn't given, up until 2005, he really didn't talk publicly too much about this. Like, he had a handful of appearances, but, like, basically didn't talk to anybody until 2005. And then he started giving interviews and appearing at, like, Bigfoot conferences. So, yeah, again, the film is just under a minute, 59 and a half seconds. So Patterson had become interested in Bigfoot. He read an article about the creature in 59.
Okay.
And then in 1962, he visited Bluff Creek and talked with a bunch of Bigfoot believers. So this was like an area where Bigfoot had supposedly been spotted.
Right.
It was also close to an area called Willow Creek where there has been Bigfoot sightings. And you might know, I haven't actually seen it, but there's a movie called Willow Creek about Bigfoot.
I have not.
I think it's a fictional movie, but I think it's like loosely based on sightings that have happened there potentially. But yeah, so he returned again in 64. And along with a man named Pat Graves, he went to this area called Laird Meadows, and Patterson saw some what he thought were fresh Bigfoot tracks. Right. So he was kind of like invigorated. Like,
jazzed
oh shit.
Up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's like, shit, this is happening. So he, over this time, and like especially starting now, starts investing a lot of his time and money into searching for Bigfoot. So, and of course was ridiculed as anybody would be, I guess, even now. But he solicited funds from people. He got some encouraging response. He published a paperback called Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist in 1966 at his own expense. And some of the income from the sales he put into his like Bigfoot search, fund.
Right.
So this is where it gets a little weird. In May and June of 1967, he began filming a docudrama / pseudo-documentary about cowboys being led by an old miner and a wise Indian tracker on a hunt for Bigfoot. So, like, in my head, when I thought of this video, was just like, I initially thought that maybe it was somebody that was into Bigfoot, but that maybe it was just somebody out camping or doing whatever that were like, oh shit,
right,
and had a camera. But no, he's out there filming this weird docudrama.
That's a bizarre concept.
It's so weird. I was like, I'm reading this and I'm like, no. The storyline called for Patterson, his Indian guide, who was Bob Gimlin in a wig.
So fucking, like... A white guy playing a Native American.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just
1960s.
White dude with a wig on is suddenly an Indian.
Classic.
And the cowboys, they were supposed to be recalling in flashbacks the stories of Fred Beck. So that was a reference to the 1924 Ape Canyon incident. There were like several reported encounters of ape men in Washington as they tracked the beast on horseback. So this is real weird.
Yeah.
He shot this film for 3 days. He had like 9 or 10 volunteer like acquaintances of theirs come to like be various parts in this film.
Right.
And presumably he would have needed a costume for Bigfoot when that like climactic scene eventually came that they found Bigfoot. So supposedly, according to Patterson and Gimlin, who were the only two to actually be present for that video.
Right.
None of their other friends or whatever were there when this happened. They were riding upstream on horseback, which is like a nice little image.
Yeah.
They're like riding along the creek together.
Right. Just guys being dudes.
Just like they weren't even, I guess they weren't even filming at this point. They had the camera, but I don't know if they were like scouting a location or what. But they were just hanging out. October 20th, 1967. Sometime between 1:15 and 1:40 p.m., they came to an overturned tree with a large root system at a turn in the creek. Patterson described it as almost as high as a room. When they rounded it, quote, there was a log jam, a crow's nest left over from the flood of 64, and then they spotted the figure behind it nearly simultaneously. So their stories don't differ so greatly that it's like suspicious, but they had a few differing details, but the figure was either crouching beside the creek to their left or standing there on the opposite bank. So Patterson thought it was like 6.5 to 7 feet tall. Gimlin thought it was like 6 feet, whatever, big, tall thing. The film shows what they both claimed was a large, hairy, bipedal, ape-like figure with short, quote, silvery brown or, quote, dark reddish brown or, quote, black hair.
Okay.
Those are very different, but okay.
Very different. But, I mean, eyewitness accounts, I would be suspicious if they were exactly the same.
Right, exactly. Covering most of its body, including its prominent breasts.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Patterson estimated that he was about 25 feet from the creature at his closest. So he said his horse like reared up when he saw the figure. And then Patterson spent like 20 seconds getting himself out of the saddle, calming the horse down, getting around to the other side and getting his camera before he started running towards this figure, because it makes more sense, I think, in a way that he was already a Bigfoot enthusiast.
Right.
That like some people might have just been shocked enough to be like, what the hell?
Right.
And this wasn't a time where we just had like a phone in our hand already that we could just be like, boom. So he's like, oh shit.
Because this was shot on film, right? Like actual film.
Exactly. This was the late 60s. So, but he was like excited, like, oh my God, like it's happening. So the film is initially pretty shaky until he gets about 80 feet away. The figure glances over its right shoulder at the men, and Patterson fell to his knees, which like I laughed only because part of me was like, did he like trip on a rock in the stream? But then the other part of me was like, was he just so...
Yeah, like,
He made eye contact with Bigfoot and he was like, finally! And yeah, he just fell to his knees in like joy.
Yeah.
So he falls to his knees. The creature disappears behind a grove of trees for like 14 seconds, reappears in the film's final 15 seconds, and then fades into the trees again, is lost to view as the reel of film ran out. He got a second roll of film. They filmed the tracks that they saw from the creature. And then they tracked it for like a mile, but they lost it in the overgrowth. And then they went back to their campsite and got some plaster, and they went back and made plaster casts of the footprints.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, again, he thought scientists would be like psyched about this, but everybody was like, no.
Right.
Usually most of the scientists that saw it were like at these scientific organizations where it was filmed. They weren't like meeting with him personally. Most of them expressed like reservations about it, but some at the very least would admit that they were intrigued. But I think that was kind of like the best that he got. So Patterson seemed like he was very excited to kind of sell this film and like to make money from this.
Right.
Which I guess some people could see as sketchy.
Yes.
That somebody's so like, take it, like give me money, yeah. But some could also see as like, this is a guy who was searching for Bigfoot for years.
Right.
And finally had his proof.
It's like his life's work.
Exactly, like he was psyched. So he made a deal with BBC to allow the use of the footage in a docudrama. It was shown in like local movie houses around the Pacific Northwest and the Midwest. Got a decent amount of public or national publicity. He like went on a few popular talk shows to talk about the film and his belief in Bigfoot. He actually got involved in some costly legal entanglements when he sold overlapping distribution rights to the film.
Oh, wow.
So again, he's very excited.
Yeah.
Maybe, again, you could argue like he's so excited for money that he's just selling it to everybody, or is he just so excited for his proof to get out there that he's like wants everybody to have it.
Right.
Unclear. So he apparently continued to actively hunt Bigfoot up until his death, which for me is a sign of it not being a hoax.
Right.
Just in the sense that, like, you'd think if his whole goal was, like, to, over these years, to orchestrate this crazy hoax and make this money,
right,
wouldn't he kind of be done at that point if that was his only goal?
Rest on his laurels.
Yeah.
He's sold that. It's the most famous Bigfoot film ever. Like, he doesn't need
Exactly.
to, like, hunt him anymore.
Why keep doing it? Like, he got, I mean, aside from an actual Bigfoot,
right,
which, I mean, you could argue maybe that was his next goal for a hoax, was, like, to show a real Bigfoot.
But then I feel like he would have done that. The fact that, like, this is his only output.
Well, it's possible that his death cut him short, because he died in 72. Yeah, and this was only, I mean, the video was only 67, and then he's got, years of showing it off places, so maybe the argument could be that he died before he had a chance to, like, complete that.
Interesting.
But yeah, he even, like, got funded for a trip to go to Thailand. There was, like, a claim that a Sasquatch was being held in a Buddhist monastery. He, like, went to Thailand to go investigate a claim. Like, that doesn't, to me, I mean, again, unless he was hoping that he could get this Sasquatch and bring it back, and then he'd be, like, the most famous dude ever.
Right.
And I'm not really sure how I feel about this quote. A few days before he died, he told this other Bigfoot book author, Peter Byrne, that in retrospect, quote, he wished he would have shot the thing and brought out a body instead of a reel of film. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like, that feels bad. I feel like there should be some healthy level of, like, respect for any creature. Like, there are people, obviously, out there who are searching for animals that aren't quite as folkloric as Bigfoot, but that are animals that, like, are said to be extinct, but supposedly aren't, and there have been apparent sightings, and they're out there looking for it. Like, I would have to hope, and I'm sure some of them would kill the animal too, but I would have to hope that you wouldn't want to kill that creature if you were so, like, into it.
Right. Well, a story that reminds me of that is Darwin, when he was on the SS Beagle, sailing around the Galapagos Islands and everything. Every animal that he wrote about and described, he also ate.
Dude.
So,
what the hell?
Right.
Jesus.
So
he just, like, that had to be part of his research, is, like, how it tasted?
How does it taste?
Oh, come on.
Fucked up. That's weird.
That's fucked.
And, like, I get, like, back then he would, like, you'd collect samples, so you'd have to kill, like, one of them. That as shitty as that is, I get it. Yeah. But the whole eating part of it is just like, okay, dude.
You took it a little too far.
Shit. It's like, it's weird.
Nobody needs to know what it tastes like.
Right.
That doesn't affect my researching of this animal.
No, it's not scientific.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel great about that. But then again, like, yeah, I guess you can see it from the side of he wanted definitive proof.
Right.
And a film is always going to be questioned.
We still question it to this day.
We still question it to this day. So I get it from that side. So this film, of course, has been watched and studied and, gone over in meticulous detail.
Oh, yeah.
Really, still to this day, it hasn't been proven one way or the other. There really hasn't, as far as I could read, hasn't been anybody that has, like, brought up any definitive proof that, like, this is a fake.
Right.
There were a few things, like, I guess at the time, so I didn't really read the exact timeline of, like, when the film was supposedly developed, but apparently part of the story was that the film was developed, like, over the weekend. But at the time, this certain film could only be developed by a lab that had, like, a very expensive machine. And the only stores or labs in the, like, on the West Coast that had one didn't do developing over the weekends. And, like, his brother-in-law who'd had the film developed, like, doesn't remember where he took the film. So that kind of maybe points to, like, the film being made earlier than they said that it was.
Right.
It was odd to some people that Patterson was really into publicity, but Gimlin wasn't. That maybe Gimlin knew that it was a hoax and didn't really want to talk about it. So Gimlin later reported that he avoided publicity because Patterson and the film's promoter, Al Diatley, had broken their agreement to pay him a third of the share of any profits. So that he was just like, fuck this. And apparently his wife also didn't really like the idea of him being super public. Who knows? There was, like, a technical writer for a technology firm. I don't understand this line of anything. Who had a hobby of investigating and writing about Northwest mysteries. Like, how does that all connect? A technical writer for a technology firm is writing about, I was like, okay.
That doesn't make sense.
But he apparently started interviewing people who knew Patterson, and a lot of people described him as a liar and a con man. There were a lot of local creditors that had sued him. Several people, quote, suffered financially from dealings with him. He had, like, gotten a loan from somebody for one of his Bigfoot films and never repaid them. Even Bob Gimlin sued the promoter and Patterson's widow in 1974 about that not receiving his third of a share.
Wow.
So that's not great. his buddy that he did this video with. So other things were, so again, he supposedly had this costume, which I don't think is a deal breaker in itself.
Right.
That he was making this weird movie. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Right.
And again, you're making a bad name for Bigfoot researchers doing shit like that.
Right.
Like, it's one thing if you're out there just trying to catch him on camera, but like, why are you doing this weird video with like cowboys and Indians? Like, the hell, dude. So it makes sense that he would have a costume, but that of course works against him because it's like, well, if he already had a Bigfoot costume, how do we know it just wasn't a person in a costume?
Well, do we have the costume? Like, did they ever find the costume that he
No.
had?
So Philip Morris, owner of Morris Costumes in, I think it was in North Carolina, claimed in 2002. So this was like one of those things where like he didn't come out for a long time because he thought it would like look bad if he revealed all this stuff, like, you know, gave away the magician's tricks kind of idea.
Right.
Which is like, okay, like this happened in the late 60s and you didn't come out until the early 2000s and we're supposed to believe you. But he claims that he made a gorilla costume that was used in the film. He said he sold an ape suit to Patterson via mail order in 1967, that Patterson specifically requested more massive shoulders and longer arms, and he claims that whoever wore it could have pulled off that specific walk because the suit had like much bigger feet, and like he compared it like walking in clown shoes that you couldn't walk normally.
Right.
And that like people have described the way that the creature turns to look over the shoulder, like it's not like just a head turn, it's like a whole upper body turn. But this costume maker claims that because the person was probably wearing shoulder pads that they would have had to turn their whole torso.
But that's also consistent with like primatology. Like, I know that like gorillas can't turn their head; they have to turn their whole upper body.
Exactly.
So that could be the shoulder pads, but it could also just be like a physiological, like, I don't know. Yeah.
No, he had no other evidence besides just saying that. I think that they had even asked him to like reproduce a similar suit that he had given them, and he kind of like dodged it and never did that.
Right.
So there's that, and there's also this other acquaintance who I believe was there, maybe one of the volunteer like other people in the film, Bob Hieronymus, who claimed in '99 that he was the figure in the film. He said he hadn't previously discussed his role because he hoped to be paid eventually, and he was afraid of being convicted of fraud if he confessed. But since he was never paid, his lawyer basically told him that you wouldn't be held liable for anything.
Right.
So he came forward. His mother and his nephew claimed to have seen an ape suit in his car. A longtime friend said he revealed the hoax like back in '68. But he described the suit that he wore, and it varied greatly from the suit that Philip Morris described making. This Bob Hieronymus's descriptions, like he said that the hands and feet were attached, and Morris said that they were separate, like just pretty big differences like that wouldn't just be misremembering.
Right.
So, and again, his only proof is just that he said that that was him.
Right.
And again, I don't deny necessarily that he did have an ape suit.
Right.
That maybe they were planning to do that, and then
correlation does not imply causation.
Exactly.
Just because he has an ape suit and just because they're making a Bigfoot documentary doesn't necessarily mean that they hoaxed it.
Right.
Like, it's possible that they were making this weird documentary in a place where...
Super weird.
Yeah, a docudrama. In a place where Bigfoot sightings have happened, and they just happened to get lucky and catch a real Bigfoot. Like,
right. Like, they did choose the location specifically for the high instance of Bigfoot sightings.
Right.
So they were kind of in prime area.
It's suspicious, but it's not necessarily...
Yeah.
Absolutely fake.
Well, yeah, and it feels just as, like, attention and money grabby to me for these people to come out in like the late 90s, early 2000s to be like, no, this was a hoax. Like, really? Like, I really just don't think, how much money could he have promised you at the time that you were going to just stay quiet about this crazy hoax? But we'll get in, when we get into explanations, I will talk about some other hoaxes that happened over the years. So there's some good ones. Maybe not, if that was a hoax, maybe none as good as that. If that truly was a fake, it's a damn good fake.
Because I remember seeing a TV show where there was anatomists, people talking about like the anatomy of the Patterson-Gimlin film and like really like studying the movements and the way that like the skin hangs on the bones and just like all of like the actual physical attributes of the creature in the Patterson-Gimlin film. And they basically concluded that like if this is a suit, it's an insanely good suit. And it was made like...
And where the fuck is the suit?
Right, and where is it? And who made it? And like how did they make it? Because I would be interested to hear somebody compare the Patterson-Gimlin film to the beginning of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is roughly around the same time period.
True.
And has gorilla costumes in it. And,
Mhm.
someone like Stanley Kubrick, who's very exacting and specific, wouldn't have just gotten some, like, 2-bit monkey suits. Like, he would have, like, really paid for some good ones. So I'd be curious to hear how the Patterson-Gimlin film stacks up against that, because I think that would be a good, like, sort of benchmark to set it
Yeah.
against.
Yeah, it almost feels to me like so many people, like, at that point when Philip Morris, the costume designer, came forward in 2002, this video had already been out forever
Right.
and had been picked apart. And again, part of the reason that, like you said, people have been not able to disprove this video is because of how realistic the suit looks,
Right.
how realistic the gait is, like all of that stuff. And it almost felt to me like, I wonder if he wanted to take credit for this, like, incredible suit. Like, oh yeah, no, I made that. Like, I
Right.
totally made that. But he couldn't even provide any proof that he actually sold Patterson this suit.
Right.
So he couldn't even come up with, like, a receipt or some proof that he paid for a suit or anything like that.
Right.
He just said that he did. But it's like, dude, like, after all this time, and people are like, man, like, oh man, this is like, looks just like a real ape. Like, this is incredible.
Right.
To be like, oh yeah, I made that. Kind of feels to me a little bit like you're, I don't know if he still has his costume shop or what, but
Right.
to kind of be taking some credit over, like, oh yeah, I made that, like, on a whim.
Right.
Like, come on, dude.
Yeah,
And
like
this guy
not
did
only that,
not,
but,
like,
you made it like for like a mail order customer. It's not even like
Yeah.
somebody came in and like said like, I'm gonna pay you $100,000 to make like the best Bigfoot suit out there.
right.
This is
Like,
just, like, some
he
random
made
customer.
a suit good enough that people still can't debunk that video in 2018. And yet he did that in the late 60s,
Right.
supposedly from a dude who was literally funding his Bigfoot search from, like, the sales of a book that he produced on his own dime. Like, are you
Right.
fucking with me?
I don't believe that.
There's no way he gave you enough money to do that. And that you were that good. Never heard of your costume shop, dude.
Yeah.
Why am I saying it like that?
Right.
Costume.
Costume.
So,
When it comes to the Patterson-Gimlin film, I'm on the fence.
yeah.
I could go either way depending on sort of more evidence. Like, I could totally see it being real. All of the sort of like context of the film could speak to me to be a hoax, but
yeah.
it could also just as easily be, correlation not being causation.
Mhm.
All of this sort of suspiciousness around it could just be a coincidence, and they did happen to get the best evidence of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I could go either way.
It's a
on
great
that.
video.
Yeah. It's at the very least, it's a compelling video. It's
Yeah.
if it's a hoax, it's one of the best hoaxes ever. And
Yeah.
if it's real, then that's a wild video.
It's a wild video. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, look it up. It's awesome. Again, it's very short, but it's kind of freaky,
Yeah.
honestly, because
It is.
it really does look real.
Right.
So again, I'm super impressed. If these dudes did pull this off in the late 60s and made a video that good,
Right.
I'm impressed. So
All right. Let's get into some possible explanations of
Yes.
who or what Bigfoot is.
So obviously the big one is just that scientists think that people are seeing other animals.
Yeah. I
And-
saw an upright black bear.
Yes. A bear with mange.
Yes, with mange, like a skinny, emaciated black bear that happens to be standing on its back legs.
Exactly. That seems to be the biggest explanation as far as that goes. Also, like, scientists are also citing the fact that typically, primates, non-human primates,
Yes.
don't generally live in the United States, period, let alone the Pacific
North America,
Northwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are,
And-
Africa and Asia.
The climate that Bigfoot would live in here in North America is no great apes live in this same climate zone anywhere else in the world.
Right.
So
that's...
I get that.
Yeah, I get that. So just the fact that, again, the average person out in the woods is not a primatologist
Right.
or a scientist. They're just seeing a creature. Bigfoot's a known enough cryptid
Yeah.
that somebody would see something like that and be like, oh my God.
Your brain fills in the gaps.
Exactly. You don't know what else it could be. I've never seen a real bear out in the wild.
Right.
I've seen like a bear in a zoo, but I've never seen a bear out in the woods.
Right.
Thank God. And I don't know if I saw a bear that I would know for sure that was it. I don't know what it would look like. I definitely don't know what a bear on its hind legs would look like. So there's really no telling. But it's one of the most common explanations for just like people are just seeing other animals.
Right.
And they're just like, oh, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But without any other proof, even a quick video, shitty, blurry video,
Right.
could just be a bear.
Could just be a bear. I think that a lot of sightings are probably misidentified.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is logical, that a lot of people are seeing things that are explainable and their brains are filling in the rest because Bigfoot is such a well-known cryptid.
Yeah.
So that rings to me as possible for a lot of these like sightings.
I think so. The other big thing, of course, is hoaxes.
Yeah.
They don't know about that video being a hoax. So here, some of the fun hoaxes that I found. So there's a guy named, where's his name? Why is his name not there? No! Oh no. Okay. This guy is a longtime Bigfoot enthusiast, and he's the CEO of Searching for Bigfoot Incorporated. He appeared on the Coast to Coast AM paranormal radio show in 2005, saying that he was 98% sure his group would be able to capture a Bigfoot they've been tracking in California. Like a month later, he announced on the same Coast to Coast AM show that he had access to a captured Bigfoot, and he was going to arrange like a pay-per-view event for people to come see it. But then a few days later, he said there was no captive Bigfoot, and he blamed like some unnamed woman for misleading him. So there's been like a lot of things like that where people are like, oh yeah, I got a Bigfoot. And then they're like, oh, whoops, actually no. And it's like, did he actually, if somebody believes enough, like maybe that woman did tell him that and he was like, heck yeah.
Right.
And then she didn't come through and he was like, shit. You'd have to ask yourself, like, why did he announce this on a radio show before he was sure?
Right.
But, so in 2012, a man in Montana, this like shouldn't be a funny story. It's kind of a funny story though.
Oh.
The guy died, but he was killed by a car in Montana while perpetrating a Bigfoot hoax using a ghillie suit. So that's like a camouflage suit. You know what I'm like? You can picture that?
Like a sniper.
Yeah, like the camouflage suit with like all the shit hanging off of it to look like foliage.
Exactly.
I looked up pictures and they're ridiculous.
Yes, they are.
I don't think I had ever seen one before.
Right.
Yeah, he was wearing this fucking suit and he stepped like right onto a highway. And then a 15-year-old girl hit him. I was like, wait a second, what? Can 15-year-olds driving?
Right.
Like, does she have like her driver's
You
permit?
can get like a permit, right?
Oh, that sucks. Like, it's probably like her first ever drive.
Right.
She hit a Bigfoot. Fake Bigfoot.
Some dude pretending to be Bigfoot.
Yeah. So this girl hits him, another car swerves, and then a 17-year-old ran him over.
Jesus.
And he fucking died. And yeah, his whole goal was just that some like people would call in a Bigfoot sighting. And the sad thing about it was that he died and nobody called in a Bigfoot sighting. I don't know if he died soon enough that nobody else saw him. Yeah.
That's
so
fucked up.
there's shit like that. Okay, the dude I was talking about was Tom Biscardi. That was the
CEO.
the Searching for Bigfoot Incorporated guy. Okay, so in 2008, these dudes, Rick Dyer and Matthew Whitten, posted a YouTube video saying that they had discovered the body of a dead Bigfoot in a forest in northern Georgia. So they called Tom Biscardi to come investigate. Don't know what happened with that. They got $50,000 from Searching for Bigfoot Incorporated as a good faith gesture.
Jesus.
Yeah. The story was covered by like BBC, CNN, ABC News, Fox News. Like this was a big thing.
Wow.
Soon after the press conference, the alleged body was delivered in a block of ice in a freezer, but it was found that the hair wasn't real, the head was hollow, and the feet were rubber, and they obviously admitted that it was a hoax. So, those fuckers.
Wow. Wouldn't those news organizations like, I don't know, do like any kind of like fact gathering before they reported
Yeah,
that?
before they like went and like did a press conference.
Right.
I don't know. So that was like obviously uncovered to be a hoax.
Yes.
Then 6 years later, I actually wrote in my comments, Rick Dyer, this asshole, perpetrated another hoax in January 2014. He claimed he had killed a Bigfoot outside of San Antonio. San Antonio.
I
Just blended those two things together. Wow. He killed the Bigfoot outside of San Antonio in September 2012. So this was like over a year before he made this claim. Don't know why. He says that he had scientific tests, maybe this is why. He had scientific tests performed on the body. DNA test, 3D optical scans, to body scans. Quote, "It is the real deal. It's Bigfoot and Bigfoot's here and I shot it and now I'm proving it to the world," is what he said. He claimed he planned to take it on tour in 2014. He released a few photos and videos as well as like individuals' reactions to seeing it, which I'm assuming they maybe were seeing the real thing, but maybe we're just seeing the photos. I don't know.
Right.
But he never revealed any of the tests or the scans. He said he would reveal the body and the tests in February 2014 in a news conference at Washington University, but he never made those tests available, conveniently. He went on a tour in Phoenix, again, presumably like with the body.
Right.
And then the body was taken to Houston in late March, he admitted on his Facebook page that his Bigfoot corpse was another hoax.
Jesus.
He had paid this dude, Chris Russell, like calling you out, Chris,
Fucking A, Chris
of
Russell.
Twisted Toy Box. So,
Wow.
there you go. To manufacture the prop from latex foam and camel hair. Gross.
Wow. Poor camel.
Yeah, he got like 60 grand from that tour. And then still claimed that he actually did kill a Bigfoot, but that he didn't want to take the real body because he thought it was going to get stolen. Like, come
just
on, man.
fucking nut up and just say, like, I hoaxed this.
Like, why are we going to believe you now after you already produced a supposed corpse that was like an obvious fake?
And this is why people don't believe in Bigfoot.
Exactly.
Shit like that.
Because of people like Rick Dyer.
Ruining it for everybody.
God damn it, Rick. And you too, fucking Twisted Toy Box.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
It's a shitty name, dude.
It's a shitty name. Really mad at both of you. So yeah.
Those are the more, like, tame explanations as to what Bigfoot could be.
Yeah.
Let's get into some paranormal.
Some paranormal. All right.
So, there's the belief that Bigfoot is an interdimensional being who exists in a dimension other than our own, but sort of slips into our dimension for, you know, a few minutes or a few hours or maybe even a few days here and there.
Yeah.
The idea being that, like, he's just, you know, walking, doing his thing in the woods in another... I don't know, actually, does Bigfoot have some kind of agency in changing dimensions, or is he just kind of, like, happenstance slipping in and out?
I'm not sure. Is the idea still that there are a bunch of Bigfoot and that they're all just slipping in and out?
I think so.
Yeah.
And so, like, the idea would be you know, he's walking around in his woods in his dimension, and, you know, the veil between our two dimensions sort of slips, or like the boundary between our two dimensions slips closer to him, and then all of a sudden he's in our dimension instead of his own, but he's just still walking, doing his thing, and all of a sudden he's in another dimension, doesn't know it. Which
would make sense in the Patterson-Gimlin film, like the fact that they tried to track him, and that he eventually just kind of
slipped back.
She eventually kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of why people, you know, only ever get that brief glimpse or brief video, photo, whatever, and like generally people aren't able to like continue tracking.
Right.
There's even been a lot of stories about people like following tracks and those tracks disappearing.
Yeah.
Which seems unlikely for such a huge creature
Right.
that they would get to some point where like they just all of a sudden like where did they go?
Yeah.
Unless they went into a different dimension.
They just went back to their own. Which is also why we've never had a confirmed body of a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
It would go a long way to explain a lot of it.
Yeah.
And you know, we're gonna see when we do our Skinwalker Ranch episode, Bigfoot's gonna make an appearance.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I would not be of the opinion that Bigfoot is a sentient interdimensional traveler. I would see like someone like the Mothman. I feel like would be a sentient interdimensional traveler.
Yeah.
That purposefully leaves its dimension to come into our own to warn us.
Right.
Which is why the Men in Black have to come, Injured Cold has to come to kind of like collect him and bring him back to his dimension.
Yeah, because he's like, bro, stop fucking around over here.
Whereas Bigfoot isn't like doing that on purpose. He's not trying to warn us about anything. He's not trying to do anything. He's just living his life in the woods, and he just happens to slip into our dimension.
Well, and who knows, like, so if he is just slipping in to our dimension, and if we're assuming that maybe the dimension that he comes from are is a very similar wooded area or whatever that he's in.
Right.
Yeah, there could be some aspect of like he doesn't even totally realize initially that he has slipped.
Right.
Into this other, if he's still out in the woods, it's not like he slipped from his woodsy dimension onto like, you know, Times Square or something and he's like, shit. But that, you know, he's slipping into very similar settings, and then maybe that could explain some of like the older, more violent reactions to humans, that maybe it wasn't even so much like, I don't know, not that the killings were like premeditated or anything like that, but just that it was like a real shock of like, what the fuck? Like maybe humans or human-like creatures don't exist in the dimension they come from, and then he slips into here, and then he sees some person with like a gun, and he's like, holy shit.
Right.
I'm gonna whack this thing against a tree.
It's trying to stab me with a tiny little knife.
Yeah. I'm just gonna break all his bones.
It's fucking
the only way I know how. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Another theory that I have that isn't necessarily, I don't know if I got this theory from a short story by Chuck Palahniuk. So in the short story, there is a tribe of Native American people who live in the Midwest who transform into Bigfoot in much the same way that you would imagine like a werewolf.
Interesting.
So like they exist as humans, and then once a month or whatever on the full moon or however that works, they transform into Bigfoot overnight. And so they go and they just do their thing in the woods. Either they run through the woods and I don't know, eat animals, or just like run through the woods and become one with nature. And if you shoot one, it turns back into a human.
Interesting.
So which is why, or if it just dies, it turns back into a human. So the idea being that like we never found a body and we never have any proof of them because they're actually just turning back into humans.
Interesting.
So I don't know if that's an actual theory, but that's a theory that I enjoy because it would go a long way to explain a lot of it. And
Right.
With a lot of the Native American folklore that I was talking about, Bigfoot start as humans and they transform into Chinoo.
Yeah.
And then they can be transformed back into humans.
Interesting.
So
That makes sense. It matches up.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like those are the big like paranormal ideas.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard a whole lot else about paranormal explanations for Bigfoot.
No.
Not
most
really.
Most of the explanations are just he's an unknown
Yeah.
primate that lives in various places around the world and has yet to be formally documented by science.
He just likes running around in the woods, letting his boobs bounce in the breeze
Flap around, yeah.
with his muscular butt.
Right.
I forgot to mention too that part of why that scientist Grover Krantz
Yes.
believed that the Patterson-Gimlin film was legitimate was not only because of just like the muscular structure in general, but like they specifically mentioned the obvious muscular like tone of the buttocks or whatever.
Huh.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting too. Like just you were saying too about like the way the skin hangs on the bones or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that would be a hard thing to pull off in a costume.
Right.
Like
It's kind of like how like when you have an actor who's like wearing like a bald cap, it never quite looks natural because it like their head just looks a little bit, even if it's like a millimeter of hair, it just never looks quite right.
yeah,
And so I feel like even back in the 60s, it would be really hard to make a suit that has the musculature and the fat and the skin all quite right
yeah,
to where it doesn't look like a suit on top of a body, but it just looks like one coherent thing.
exactly. Especially while the supposedly person wearing it is in motion.
Right.
It'd be one thing if it was
Right.
just somebody standing there. If it was a photo,
Yes.
I feel like that'd be a lot easier. You could have all kinds of fake muscles and whatever, but like somebody moving.
And there's a decent, and it's not just like a quick little 2-second frame of them walking.
Exactly.
It's almost a minute.
Yeah,
So there's like a lot to go on. Like you can study that film and you can actually get a sense of like how the creature moves and
Yeah.
how like the skin hangs and all that stuff. So
a freaky video.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
So where do you come down on Bigfoot? How do you feel?
I don't know. I definitely feel like I feel similarly to Jane Goodall in the sense that like I want it to be real.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think that at some point with some things like this, there are so many stories from all different cultures. We talked already about me having the conversation with our grandfather about aliens,
Oh yeah.
getting like mad about it, being like, doesn't make sense. Like all these people have these stories, including from times where they couldn't like share it on social media and shit, and they couldn't read it in books. Like they just all have the same stories. Like
Yeah.
these are not recent sightings of Bigfoot only. Like this is not like, oh, Bigfoot became a thing and then like all of a sudden there's all these sightings. This is like spanning a lot of time.
Right.
So I do think that it has to at least be a creature.
There's something out there.
Yeah,
People are seeing
some
something.
breed of creature for that matter. Like there are many Bigfoot out there.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily want to see, I guess maybe I would want to see one just because they're not violent.
Yeah.
It's not like a cryptid that's known for like coming at you.
Until you hear its yell,
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't,
then you're just out.
especially if I saw it like while it was yelling, I think I would,
Yeah. Oh my god.
I might be one of those people that dies.
Yeah.
Just like
Instantly
heart
die,
attack.
Right.
Nope. So yeah, I definitely think that it's, at the very least, I think it's some type of creature that we just haven't caught yet. And I don't think that's unreasonable.
No.
Because again, there are animals like supposedly known to be extinct
Mhm.
that have had sightings since their moment of extinction.
Oh yeah.
And just because you can't catch one doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Animals are a lot smarter than us in a lot of ways. Like,
Especially a primate
come on now.
that may or may not be descended from the same primates that we are.
Exactly. Like, I just read some stupid thing on Tumblr the other day that was like, why do we think that humans are like the peak of evolution? Like, bears just eat berries and salmon all day. Like, we're stuck at jobs. Like, why do we think that we're the top tier?
Right.
Just because we are more aware of our like sentience and our intelligence. Like animals are super smart. My fucking dog is borderline smarter than I am.
Yes.
And we're talking again about these Bigfoot, which are supposedly linked enough to us that they walk like us and look similar to us. Like, why do we not think that they could be smart enough to avoid our fucking destructive asses?
Right.
Who some of us want to shoot them so we can like take them on tour and get money.
Yes.
Why wouldn't they stay away from us?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think there's a much better chance that they're real than not.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
I come down very similarly.
Yeah.
That Bigfoot are out there.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that they're supernatural. I
No.
think that they're very natural. They're just remnants of either Gigantopithecus or some kind of descendant of Homo sapiens as well, or ancestor of Homo sapiens that just happens to exist either in North America or across the whole world. And they are just, their adaptation is that they are very good at hiding and avoiding other humans. Like, you know, that's how they've survived so long. And so they're really good at it. You know, small populations, little pockets here and there. And one day we may discover them. At the very least, there's some unknown bear out there in Central Asia that definitely exists.
Exactly.
That we've never documented by science.
Yeah.
So I have a very scientific view of it, but I also think that there's absolutely something out there that will one day be identified as, this is what we've all been seeing when we talk about Bigfoot.
Yeah. Things can adapt to all kinds of crazy shit. We were watching One Strange Rock the other day, which is great.
Yeah.
It's narrated by Will Smith.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
It's like talking with a bunch of astronauts who have been in space, like about their, it's super cool. I actually found out about it reading about our last topic, the astronauts talking about UFOs and aliens.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was talking about that aspect of like these astronauts speaking on the show, and I was like, that sounds cool.
Right.
But one of the episodes was talking about this like whole, it's a breed of like bacteria that live in fucking like acid.
Yeah.
Like
literal acid.
Insane.
Yeah.
So I mean, if that can exist, if we like are willing to accept that, they're not animals that we would like recognize as an animal, but it's still a living being in acid, and we don't believe there's Bigfoot in the woods somewhere. Come on.
Right, come on. Well, there's those animals that we thought for the longest time that all life on Earth required the sun. That we all fed off the sun.
Yep.
But then they discovered those animals that live next to the hydrothermal vents, deep in the ocean, completely devoid of any sunlight whatsoever.
Which is creepy.
But they feed, super creepy. But there's like these crabs and like these worms and everything that live in and around these hydrothermic vents that have never known the sun and will never know the sun.
Yeah.
And yet they survive, and they completely defy everything that we, quote, know about life.
Yeah.
So if something like that can exist, how come a primate can't exist in North America?
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's crazy. So let us know what you think about Bigfoot.
Yep.
Tell us if you believe.
Tell us in the comments.
Yeah.
Will probably not be the last time we talk about Bigfoot.
Probably not. We will at least be talking about Bigfoot variations, if not just talking about other aspects of Bigfoot.
Yep.
Because it's a huge topic.
Yes.
So, yeah, episode 22.
22.
Bigfoot.
This is a good one.
It's a good one. Yeah, I like Bigfoot. Want to learn more now.
Right.
I'm gonna check out the website that I was talking about. The website that I was looking at when Gray got here is the oldest and largest Bigfoot organization, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, or BFRO. BFRO. It's a free database to individuals and other organizations, and has reports from across North America, and they even do Bigfoot expeditions.
That's wild.
There was like a link to like 2019 Bigfoot expeditions. Like,
let's do it.
If I wasn't having a baby in a few months, we'd be going to look for Bigfoot.
Be in the woods right now.
Yeah, we just got to wait until he's a little bigger.
Yeah.
And then he's coming with us. It'll be great. So, yeah, episode 22 of Unknowable. Love you.